You're watching VinylicpumaGaming. So armor in Skyrim is really important. Just like you need really good spells or weapons to deal damage and control the flow of combat, you're also going to just need good armor for taking damage. As I mentioned in the previous video on the worst weapons in Skyrim, Bethesda for the most part has done a fairly decent job of obscuring some of the weaker armors in the game. While I don't think they did quite as good of a job as they did with weapons, it could definitely be much worse. Now, before we get into this video, I want to make my rationale for choices here as clear as possible. In my mind, the most important stat on a piece of armor is its armor rating. Ultimately, things like encumbrance or armor weight don't matter once you have either the unhindered perk for light armor or the conditioning perk for heavy armor. While it may be a while before you get either of these perks, once you do get them, you won't have to worry about armor weight anymore. Just keep in mind that the armor doesn't weigh anything while the armor is equipped. If you unequip the armor, it now weighs whatever it weighs. I'm also only going over armor sets on this list. While you may be able to find unique armor pieces that have enchantments or even just worse armor ratings in general, like the wooden mask, these items don't benefit from certain perks like matching set, where you want each piece in the set to match for additional armor bonuses. Furthermore, while I will mention if specific armor sets also contain shields, I won't be including shields in the final armor rating for the sake of fairness. After all, not all armor sets come with a shield. So with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into what I think are the worst armor sets in the Elder Scrolls Skyrim Remastered. Number 9, the Ancient Nord Armor. The problem with Ancient Nord Armor is that it provides abysmal armor rating for a heavy armor, it is acquired later on in the game, and because it requires the Daedric Smithing perk in order to achieve double improvement. So in other words, it's bad and has ridiculous upgrade requirements. To put it in perspective, Ancient Nord Armor is roughly on par with both the Imperial Heavy Armor and Standard Iron Armor that you receive at the very beginning of the game in terms of base armor rating. What's worse is that Imperial Heavy Armor also benefits from double improvement and only requires the Steel Smithing perk. It's important to mention that Steel Armor has a base armor rating of 72 without the shield and can appear as early as level 2. Ancient Nord Armor, on the other hand, has a base armor rating of 60. So while Steel Armor isn't one of the best armors in the game by any means, it's still better than Ancient Nord Armor and doesn't require Daedric Smithing for improvement. The only reason Ancient Nord Armor isn't lower on this list is because of the unique Azadal's armor that got added with Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC, which if you have the special edition, you've got it. Not only does the Azadal set have much better armor rating, each piece has enchantments, and the perk requirements for upgrading are lower as you only need the Advanced Armors perk as opposed to the Daedric Smithing perk. Of course, the downside to that is that you may not have the Advanced Armors perk if you specialized in smithing heavy armors. I suppose in summary, acquire Azadal's armor, otherwise skip the Ancient Nord Armor because it sucks. Number 8, FALMER Armor. While FALMER Armor can come with a shield, it's also sort of interesting in the sense that it's fairly difficult to acquire and it isn't particularly great. On the one hand, the helmet is fairly easy to acquire as it drops from most of the FALMER enemies throughout the game. On the other hand, the chest piece, arms, and leg pieces require you to go to some Dwemer ruins and pick an expert-locked gate in the area. I don't think it's entirely worth it as the FALMER armor sucks compared to some of the other armors you can acquire early on in Skyrim. The base armor rating for FALMER armor is 65, which is pretty low for a heavy armor in Skyrim. That said, the FALMER armor does get double improvement from either the Steel Smithing or Advanced Armor perks, and this makes it better than the stock Ancient Nord Armor, but it's still inferior to something like the Steel Armor that you can acquire at level 2. On the flip side, thanks to some bugs, the FALMER helmet can be equipped and worn at the same time as any Circlet or Dragon Priest mask. So you could feasibly wear the FALMER helmet, smith it for double improvement, and then wear a Dragon Priest mask or circlet with it for the additional effects. The drawback here is that there's also a bug that doesn't allow you to benefit from the matching set perk, despite the fact that FALMER helmets are a part of the FALMER armor set. This appears to be because of the way the FALMER helmet was originally coded. Ultimately, avoid this armor and use something else. Number 7, Imperial Armor. So I'm sure everyone is already familiar with the Imperial Armor, as it's one of the very first armor sets that you see in Skyrim. In fact, it might be the first heavy armor set that you see in Skyrim. Imperial Armor has the exact same base armor rating as the Ancient Nord Armor and Iron Armor. However, the advantage that Imperial Armor has is that you can acquire it towards the very beginning of the game, and the set has its own shield, plus you can get double improvement with the Steel Smithing perk. I suppose it's also worth mentioning that there are 3 different helmets for this armor. There's the standard Imperial helmet, there's the Imperial Officer's helmet, which is worn by that Imperial soldier that calls you to execution at the very beginning of the game, and there's also the closed Imperial helmet, which is being shown in this video. Of the 3, the closed helmet is the best, and assuming you had it, your base armor rating would be 63 instead of just 60. Usually you find this armor in fixed locations. The easiest place to get Imperial Armor is at the very beginning of the game in Helgen, and if you choose to go with Rayloff, you can kill the female Imperial Officer for her set of Imperial Armor. Number 6, Iron Armor. So the Iron Armor is a heavy armor that has an armor rating of 60. However, there is also an Iron Banded Armor that has an armor rating of 63. Keep in mind, too, that there is both an Iron Shield and an Iron Banded Shield available for Iron Armor as well. Unlike the 3 heavy armors mentioned previously, Iron Armor doesn't benefit from any smithing perks, so you won't be getting double improvement. I guess the trade-off is that you can upgrade your armor with iron ingots, but if you play Skyrim enough, you could probably find some steel ingots pretty easily. While I will admit that iron armor is more of a beginner armor, it provides some of the lowest armor ratings of any heavy armor in the game. While iron armor can be obtained at level 1, steel armor can be obtained at level 2, and as mentioned earlier, not only does steel armor have a better base armor rating, but it also benefits from smithing perks. I think the case for Iron Armor is a shame because it's prominently featured in many of the live-action trailers that you see promoting Skyrim. Unfortunately, by the time you've got a set of Iron Armor and you've upgraded it somewhat, you're going to have access to the much better Steel Armor. While you may find enchanted versions of Iron Armor that are going to be better than non-enchanted pieces of Steel Armor, Steel Armor is better. It is what it is. Save your resources and just get Steel Armor. Number 5, Fur Armor. Fur Armor is a light armor that can be acquired early on in Skyrim that just has a low armor rating for light armors in general. While the armor rating can vary, it should never get lower than 44 and never any higher than 46 unless you either upgraded it or you have light armor perks. Somehow, fur armor is better than hide armor despite the fur armor's appearance. You would think that being bare-chested would make for some bad armor. While there are versions of fur armor that aren't bare-chested, both versions provide the same armor rating. While you can't craft fur armor, you can improve it at a workbench. However, like many of the light armors on this list, fur armor doesn't benefit from any smithing perks, so you don't get double improvement. That said, if you want to use fur armor for some reason, you can occasionally find it throughout Skyrim. This is a light armor that you're going to want to avoid, but before we go on to the next entry, it's important to mention that the fur armor set doesn't contain a shield. Number 4, the Stormcloak armor. Unlike the Imperial Light Armor, which is also pretty bad, Stormcloak Armor has an inferior armor rating and does not come with a shield. For the sake of comparison, where Imperial Light Armor provides a base armor rating of 49, Stormcloak Armor provides a base armor rating of just 43. This is worse than Fur Armor entirely, which I must admit is an impressive achievement. Speaking of fur armor, the Stormcloak armor does make use of the fur gauntlets and leg pieces from fur armor. While I suppose someone could argue that the Stormcloak armor is one of the starting armors at the very beginning of Skyrim, it's also without a doubt one of the weakest starting armors. It's a little better than some of the other armors that you can acquire later on, but it's still extremely lacking as far as defenses go. If you do decide to side with Ralof at the beginning of Skyrim, I highly recommend that you kill one of the sets of Imperial Guards and take their armor instead, as it's going to be better than the Stormcloak armor you get. Number 3, Hide Armor. Of all of the craftable armor sets in Skyrim, Hide Armor is easily the worst. Hide Armor has an astoundingly low armor rating of just 40, provided you've equipped the helmet, chest piece, arm, and leg pieces. The one advantage of Hide Armor is that you are able to craft a shield where you don't get one with either the Fur or Stormcloak armors. While some may argue Hide Armor is meant to be beginner armor, both the Imperial Light and even the awful Stormcloak armors provide superior protection than Hide Armor and are usually acquired earlier. After playing for about an hour, it becomes pretty obvious that Hide Armor is inferior to the armor that you already have, regardless of whether you choose Ralof or Hadvar at the very beginning of the game. To make matters worse, you can choose between Hide Armor and the slightly better Leather Armor, as both can be crafted as soon as you get to Riverwood. Keep in mind that Leather Armor is not just superior to the Hide Armor, but it's also better than both the Imperial Light Armor and the Stormcloak Armor. In summary, Hide Armor is terrible, it's worse than the beginner armors, and it should be avoided at all costs. Scaled Armor is pretty good though. Number 2, SKAAL Armor. SKAAL Armor is just bad. Not only can you not craft SKAAL Armor, but SKAAL Armor also can't be improved at all. This means even if you have smithing perks, you won't see any improvement. The SKAAL Armor has a base armor rating of 46. Normally this would put it above or on par with Fur Armor. However, since Fur Armor can be upgraded through smithing, this makes SKAAL Armor even worse. You also have to figure that since SKAAL Armor doesn't benefit from smithing at all, in a certain way, all armor in Skyrim that benefits from smithing is better than the SKAAL Armor. This even means that Hide Armor would be better than SKAAL Armor. SKAAL Armor got added with Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC, which is pretty weird because the Dragonborn DLC added many items and weapons that were better than many of the weapons that appeared in vanilla Skyrim. Regardless, just avoid SKAAL Armor. And finally, number 1, Worn Shrouded Armor. As far as armor sets are concerned, the Worn Shrouded Armor provides the lowest armor rating of any armor, and for that reason, might just be the worst armor available to the player in Skyrim. Just like the other Shrouded Armors that are available from the Dark Brotherhood, the Worn Shrouded Armor doesn't come with a shield. For the sake of comparison, the base armor rating on offer here is 35, which is lower than some of the early game light armors that you can acquire. What's worse is that this armor can't be upgraded at all. The only way to improve your armor rating beyond 35 is to acquire light armor perks, which won't improve your armor rating enough or as much as you would probably like. I guess you could enchant the individual pieces, but why would you want to waste your enchantments when you could simply just take any other light armor in the game? You can craft it, it gets double improvement, and you can enchant those armors with the same enchantments. Ultimately, I think this armor simply just doesn't provide the protection you'll need, and you're better off with literally any other armor in Skyrim. Alright guys, that's going to pretty much wrap up this particular video. If you like this video, please be sure to leave a like, and as always, take care, and I'll see you all next time.